Hey everyone. So Ross is free. I'll talk a little bit about it. I'm overjoyed. I'm ecstatic. It was basically the beginning of Bitcoin for me. It all kind of happened at once because there was WikiLeaks as well, and you couldn't send money to WikiLeaks any other way, and that was kicking off at exactly the same time. And I was in I was in my early 20s, so I was personally very interested in the kind of stuff that was on the Silk Road. So but it was just great, right? There was nothing about the store of value or the hedging against inflation or any of that stuff. All I knew is that it couldn't be arbitrarily printed, and that was good enough for me. I wasn't into Austrian economics or any of that stuff yet. I didn't know about mad gains. It was just, as far as I knew, Bitcoin cost $5, and if you wanted to buy some weed, it would cost you maybe 10 Bitcoins. And if the price doubled to to $10 per Bitcoin, then you would only need 5 Bitcoins. But I didn't care about that because I would always just buy and spend, right? And that was what I would buy, weed back then. And I feel finally comfortable talking about it because I literally live in a country where weed's been legal forever. And it's now deemed essential to the point where it was one of the few things you could buy during the pandemic. So this was the beginning for me. And I despised the war on drugs so much because look, I haven't really reconciled all this exactly, but I definitely don't look at it the way most other people do that I can see. But when it comes to, uh, I don't really think there's any real line you can draw between medicine and drugs. And there's a lot of legal drugs out there that are unbelievably harmful that I don't think have any valid medicinal use, that are legal and are sold all over the place, and half the population's addicted to, and are just incredibly damaging. And no one cares. There's no stigma around the people that sell this stuff. Some pharmacist sitting at the back of a CVS that would sell you it if you give him the correct prescription. No one is going after that guy and being like, yeah, you need to think about what you're doing. Maybe some people are, but he doesn't have to walk around in shame what he's doing. And there are people selling stuff there's alcohol as well, right? There's people selling, there's entire companies that make beers and whiskeys and stuff like that. Does it mean there's no such thing as, being an alcoholic? No, there are alcoholics and they have awful things, and we don't blame that on the people that make beer and stuff. And does it mean that people are unable to drink responsibly? No, it doesn't. There are plenty of people that will just have a whiskey every now and again, and it doesn't do any harm to anyone. And that's totally a drug, and there's totally an industry around it. And there's just no negative connotation because it's legal. That's all there is to it. So this is the point I'm like getting annoyed about because I'm trying not to get to get into that and just go into why I'm happy. Because the first time I guess the context is relevant because the first time I went on Silk Road, that was it. I thought this is the end of the war on drugs without us having to fight and fight and fight and campaign to get these dishonest politicians to slowly loosen the regulations around this stuff and stop all the damage they're doing. Instead, someone just made a website that leveraged Bitcoin and Tor and PGP and all of these fantastic protocols that would allow us to just bypass the entire thing, and we wouldn't need to care about it anymore because drugs are so small and so light that you can actually ship them quite realistically from person to person. And this was just amazing. And and when Ross was finally free, I didn't think it would hit me like it did. I was absolutely in tears for hours over it. I couldn't even explain it to my daughter, who was like, "Who's Ross?" Like I couldn't even explain it. It was just that overwhelming for me, more than even when Assange was freed last year, but that wasn't quite with the same punch because there were a bunch of asterisks around that. He hasn't been pardoned, and that was done almost cynically to make sure, like, they were like, all right, you want your life back, do you? Okay, well, now you have to permanently implicate anyone doing dangerous journalism again and set a precedent that it's a bad thing. Assange needs to get pardoned, and he wasn't. He had his life dangled before his eyes, and if you want to get out, you need to make life difficult for anyone else that ever might do what you want to do again. Ross was given an unequivocal pardon. That means he's not even a criminal anymore. That means, like, if he wants to go and get a job at 7-Eleven and they do a criminal record check, he doesn't have one. That's huge. That's absolutely fantastic, and I'm really grateful to Trump for doing it. So, but here's the thing everyone keeps saying. When the trolls come out and they're like, oh, a man convicted of, contract killing, murder for hire, that was total bullshit. That was a stitch up. That was to make everyone hate Ross and bury him before the legal proceedings even happened and make him lose all sympathy amongst the public. Turned out it was total fabricated nonsense. Ross never paid money to anyone to kill anyone. There was some screenshots taken from the admin account, which was logged into well after Ross was in jail. So there were obviously multiple people making use of that handle on the website or on the forum under the Dread Pirate Roberts handle. There's no proof of any of that. And even so, it was just a picture. And Ross just genuinely would never do something like that. We all know that. So, but it was enough to sway the court of public opinion, and still you'll get those trolls being like, oh, so this murdering drug kingpin, you're happy Trump let him out. Like, it's total bullshit. But more annoyingly than that, is the fact that the people that defend him are like, you're accusing him of being a drug dealer. All he did was make a website. Now, this is where I push back, and I think people that love Ross are being cowards. Ross didn't do anything wrong. There is nothing wrong with it. He didn't just run a website that allowed arbitrary purchases. That wasn't what Ross did, which is what everyone that wants to defend him keeps saying. He didn't just sit there and go, I'm going to make an Agora, total free marketplace. He didn't do that. He curated it. When people came on there and started trying to do child porn, he blocked it. And what he allowed was very specifically drugs. If you go on the Silk Road and you go to the top left, drugs is the main drop down, and then it's, stimulants, opiates, cannabinoids, psychedelics, ecstasy, MDMA. Like, that was what was on there. That's what the drug was for. So when people say, oh, you're going to hold Mark Zuckerberg accountable for, a death threat someone made on Facebook. No, because that's not what Facebook is for. If Facebook was specifically tailoring itself to people that wanted to use it to stalk and harass people, I mean, all right, you can argue Facebook is quite conducive to that. But the point is, that's obviously not the intention of the site. But the intention of the Silk Road was to undermine the war on drugs and to allow people to do that and to create a useful user interface for people wanting to do that. And I don't see any point pretending that he was just a naive guy that made a website and had no guesses around what people would be using it for. And, oh, some people bought and sold some drugs. Nothing to do with me. I don't deserve all this time in prison. I hate this narrative. He didn't do anything wrong. He allowed people to buy and sell what I believe. Now, here's where I get into what I believe about drugs. I've already said some of it when it comes to where do you draw the line between legal and illegal and what's medically valid and what isn't. But ultimately, I believe it comes down to this. Drugs and your usage of them is your personal responsibility. That's it. And there's nothing anyone can do to tell you otherwise. It's your choice. If you want to intoxicate yourself, if you want to alter your state of consciousness, that is one of the most fundamental rights you have. It's like you're being told you're not allowed to think certain things, if you're not allowed to feel certain things by using, psychoactive chemicals. It's your right. And the only people that I'm ever going to tell are not allowed to take drugs are children. That's it, because they don't have the ability to make a responsible decision around that stuff. Obviously, I don't want my 5-year-olds consuming alcohol or cannabis, or even cigarette smoke. I don't want that crap around my children. But when you're an adult, that is your decision, and it's not the government's job to be deciding what you can and can't consume. That is completely inappropriate. And for someone to come along and facilitate that with this unbelievable benefit of taking out all the violence that occurs as a result of trying to control these substances, they turned what is one of the most murderous things on the planet, which is drug cartels and drug dealers. All of that stuff is disgustingly violent because it's got nothing to do with drugs. It's territorial. He turned that into negative feedback on a website that looked like eBay. That's what he did. So you're talking about people hanging from their neck over bridges in Mexico, the kinds of deaths, politicians getting executed. He's turned all that into 1 star, wasn't very good, or 3 stars, better than last time, or 5 stars, came really quick, thanks a lot. Like, that's what he turned drugs into, illegal drugs. He turned it into that. And the violence that would no longer occur because of that, I'm sorry, it's not like... There are people that are looking at it like, on balance, on a pragmatic level, it's good, but it's still in practice wrong. And even Ross, I've been told, regrets it and wouldn't do the same thing if he had the choice again. And I'm not going to disrespect that, all right? He's had a long time to reflect on what his life choices were, and he says he regrets doing what he did. I'm just saying, on principle, I don't think he did anything wrong at all. I don't. He did curate the site. When people came along with stuff that was actually immoral, like selling child pornography, he shut that down immediately, as he should have. So he was curating and deciding what was appropriate to sell and what wasn't, and he decided drugs were appropriate to buy and sell. And I agree with that decision, and I don't think he made a mistake, and I don't want to watch people that the libertarians out there that love and will defend Ross and fought to get him free and did a very successful thing when they did that. Hats off to them, but I'm not going to sit here and play this silly game where we fight back against the Nazi trolls that want to sit here and tell us that the government should be in control of things like what you can and can't consume if there's anything psychoactive about it, and if it doesn't have a big giant pharmaceutical company behind it, then it should be illegal. Or I'm not going to entertain pushing like narratives to push back against these trolls, just saying all Ross did was run a website. He didn't. The war on drugs is as bad as the war on terror. It results in the deaths of just a staggering amount of people. We know that. And there's been more and more evidence for that. It's been one of the biggest thorns in humanity's side for decades now, this awful thing. And I'm not saying drugs are good, and I'm not advocating for reckless drug use or anything like that, but I just genuinely don't know where you draw the line between drugs and medicine. I don't think there is a clean line you can draw between these things. I used to smoke a lot of weed. It was really, really not a good thing for me to do, and I stopped doing it eventually. But I'm never going to tell people that consume it, and it seems to do very well for them. I'm not going to tell them that what they're doing is immoral, because it isn't. And if they're somewhere where they're not allowed to use it, if someone like Ross comes along and bypasses all of the stupid laws by using technology, that's what Bitcoin is for. Every time I use Bitcoin, I'm not using a regulated medium of exchange or, a regulated payment network. There's no KYC. Bitcoin doesn't have any of that. So every time I use that, I'm violating a bunch of financial laws. It's just down to a matter of interpretation and an expectation that I report everything and make it, put all the checks next to it that it requires to become legitimate. But screw all that. I like the fact that Bitcoin as a technology was designed to get around safeguards that are supposed to protect me, that actually are just there to control all of us and undermine our sovereignty. And that's exactly what I see. This is the only fight worth fighting. Technology keeps getting better. Some technology empowers the surveillance state, and some technology empowers the individual. The firearms, the Second Amendment, these are principles which protect individual liberty, and they're so much more important than they are more important because the enemy, the big brother apparatus that is being constructed, is going to use technology whether you like it or not. And you have the PayPal mafia and all those kinds of guys coalescing at the moment around Trump to push, what is it, Stargate, this stupid thing they just come out with, $500 billion, with Larry, what's his face, talking about how it's going to, people will commit less crimes because we'll be able to watch everything they do all the time. Saying stuff like that, like, how can you be so ignorant of political theory to ever think that that would be a good thing? And all you can do to fight back against these people is build the kind of technology that makes it more difficult and more expensive for them. And that's what the onion router does. That's what Bitcoin does. That's what PGP does. And the usage of this technology to do this is the fight. And there's no other fight I've ever been interested in for years. It's, there's been every single thing talking about all of the issues people get hot and bothered about. And the things that get tossed back and forth just feel like nonsense to me. And everything that's happened since Trump won the election, since all the leftist crap gets washed out of the system, like we're getting rid of our DEI department, hooray! And, we're letting out the January 6th prisoners, hooray! Like, all of these are good, but they're all small wins. It signals the end of this crappy battle we've had between left and right. There's just been about asinine crap, like whether you have women playing in men's sports and that sort of stuff. These are non-issues. They don't matter. Not like having not like turning the formerly free West into a surveillance state like China. That is the major issue here. And I'm not going to have this controlled opposition little battle between left and right where, Facebook got rid of a bunch of pronouns and now there's only men and women again. Hooray, we're so back. Like, who the fuck cares? It's irrelevant. That was the people. I don't buy into the nothing is real narrative, but there definitely are people pulling strings behind the scenes, and they are laughing at the fact that they got us to argue over men can get periods or not for the last 10 years. They actually managed to make us fight about that. And then you get these fake sort of conservative personalities like Charlie Kirk and Vivek and all of this, and Matt Walsh, and all these people that are getting so bent out of shape about, race hustling and all that stuff. Yeah, they're on the right when it comes to, like, Ben Shapiro and all these, like, conservative absolute pussies that don't do anything when it comes to fighting the real battles. They're just liberals from 15 years ago that, have a comfortable thing and they want to see it return to that. But they have absolutely no guts whatsoever. They never stand up for the real issues. They always just talk about, they want to fight these small symbolic battles. And Trump knows how to play that game. And I won't lie, I'm definitely was a lot more happy that he won than I would have been if Kamala had. But like the idea that the deep battles against the surveillance state are really going to be won by anyone that doesn't have the kind of courage Ross had, it's just fake. And I don't want to sit here and try and bamboozle ourselves, or myself, into thinking that, Ross was just running a website and, that was all he did, and the justice system was over the top and he should have been let out of jail. I understand that as a narrative you present to make things acceptable to people, but that's not the truth. The truth is he didn't do anything wrong. He had a moral code and he followed it. He wasn't a horrible human being that wanted to get rich off of illicit activity regardless of the morality of it. That's why there was no child pornography on there, because he actually had a moral compass and he was doing what he was doing because he thought it was the right thing to do. That's the message here. And I know he can't, he just, for whatever reason, he decided on a spiritual level the way he approached the battle was not the right one. And I have to respect that, because I'm sure there's wisdom there that I'm just not going to be able to fathom, because I haven't been sitting in a jail cell for over 10 years. But I still just think the courage and the creativity that led him to do what he did, and the naivety even, that's the spark. That is the only thing, that energy is the only thing that saves us from what is in the pipeline. The amount of stuff they are building to just make what has been the surveillance state I've known post 9/11, to make that look like a walk in the park. And that's what's coming. And I don't know how anyone is going to resist it without having that kind of courage and naivety. There's going to be a lot of martyrs in it. But I see the rise of corporate Bitcoin at the moment, and it drives me crazy. They're not going ahead with the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and Trump is doing a lot of shitcoining instead of anything to do with Bitcoin. And that's all great news to me. I don't want these guys anywhere near Bitcoin. I don't want guys like Elon Musk owning lots of Bitcoin. They are bad actors. And this is demonstrable from what they're talking about. This is big con. This is exactly why when the left were just unilaterally in control of everything, and you get all these fake right-wingers coming up saying free speech, and I'm just like, 90% of you guys aren't going to care about free speech once the pendulum swings back the other way. You're going to be happy about censorship as long as they're views you just don't like. And surprise, surprise, that's the position we're in now. And it's really disappointing to see, because no one actually has any principles. They just want to fight these stupid symbolic battles. And the gender war was just the best ever example of that. I can't believe, how many people are going to be convinced by Mark Zuckerberg going on Rogan and saying, oh yeah, it was super fucked up, bro. We had the State Department calling us to take down posts that were saying vaccines were bad. We hated doing it. It's just rank opportunism. Zuckerberg knows where the wind's blowing. The tide swung the other way. Microsoft got rid of the DEI department. Facebook got rid of the genders. None of this means anything. I really don't care. It's not going to change a freaking thing. The only thing I care about is the arms race between the surveillance state and the individual. That's the only thing I care about. That's why I worked at Start9. That's why I wanted to make plug-and-play solutions so that people could run the server side of the personal computing revolution. Because everyone has a computer, no one has a server. So that means we're slaves to the few people that have servers. So what you need is for everyone to run a server, and then you're good. And Bitcoin's the gateway drug to that, because if you're running a Bitcoin node and you're using it, you need it to be on all the time. Congrats, you've now just run your first server-side application. So don't do it on a laptop. Get a dedicated machine for it that sits next to your router. Once you server pill people on this stuff, then it's like, and do your own cloud storage, and do your own password management, and you can even host your own AI, but I'll be honest, that works really, really badly. So anyway, rant pretty much over. I just wanted to say that Ross is a hero, and he's a hero for the things he did, not for the hardship that he had to withstand as a result of it. That's just awful, and it's lamentable, and I'm glad it's over. I don't expect him to ever have to do anything like that again. He's paid his dues, but please don't ever do a disservice to the freedom movement of pretending like he deserved any jail time for anything that he did, because he did nothing wrong at all, and I will stand by that, and I will die on that hill. Thank you.